Hello, thank you for joining me for Math is Easy Step by Step. This is part 3 of solving one-step equations. We're using the inverse operation. Sometimes you can guess and check what that x equals. But remember, that x equals a real value. And so I'm showing you, rather than try to guess and check, I'm showing you how to use inverse or opposite operations in order to solve for the variable x. So let's go ahead and get to it. What's the inverse operation of adding 13.8? Well, that inverse operation is subtracting 13.8. And remember, when you do this, you want to subtract it to both sides. So of the equal sign, right? So I'm going to subtract, the inverse of adding is to subtract 13.8 on the left side, and then I'll subtract 13.8 on the right side of the equal sign. You want to balance your equation. Positive 13.8 plus a negative 13.8 cancels out. I'm left with 0. I'm left with x on the left side equals 19.9 minus 13.8. I'd like to show you how to manually subtract with decimals in just a moment, but the answer is going to be x equals 6.1. And we're going to check that answer here in a moment. So again, in checking your answers, you're going to take the original problem, substitute 6.1, our answer, everywhere you see x. Here it's nice and simple. There's only one place for that x value. Let me show you here. So 6.1 plus 13.8 equals 19.9. If I did this correctly and x equals 6.1, these two terms will add together to give me 19.9 on both sides of the equal sign. You should always, always, always check your answers, especially if you are taking an exam such as a GED or a HiSET um, equivalency exam to earn your diploma. So I like to show you manually here how we add these with decimals. When you add or subtract decimals, you line them up. It's a little different when you multiply or divide. But when you're adding and subtracting, you line these decimals up, no matter how large or small these numbers are. You add 8 plus 1 is 9. You keep that decimal lined up. And 6 plus 3 is 9. 1 plus 0 is 1. I got 19.9 on the left side. And 19.9 on the right side. 19 9/10 is another way to say it. So yes, x equals 6.1, or 6 1/10 is another way to answer that question. So here we go. Let's take another problem. We're working on the inverse operation. So anytime you see a term right next to a variable or another term with parentheses, that means to multiply. So what would be the inverse operation here? The opposite of multiplying is to divide. So since this is one-step equation, it should take 1 step to solve and determine what the value of this x is. The opposite of multiply is to divide. The inverse of multiplication is dividing. So I'm going to divide 5 to both sides of that equal sign. I'm showing you that here. 5x divided by 5 equals 15.5 divided by 5. Remember, what you do on the left side of the equal sign, you have to do on the right side of the equal sign. You got to balance that equation. So again, dividing on the left side by 5, dividing on the right side by 5. Anything over itself is 1. I talk about invisible ones in the previous video. You can check that out. That'll explain here a little bit of how 5 over 5 equals 1x. 15 divided by 5 is 3.1. 15.5 divided by 5 is 3.1. Now I'd like to check my answers, and then checking my answers, I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of long division with a decimal. And so remember, we take the value of x, 3.1, and we substitute it right back into that original equation, which was 5 times x. Let me show you that here again. 5 times x equals 15.5. So I'm going to substitute my x value, since x equals 3.1. I'm going to substitute that 3.1 where that x value was. And so here I'm showing you 3.1, which represents my value for x, times 5 is 15.5 equals 15.5. Yes, both of those sides are exactly the same. That answer checks off. X has got to equal 3.1, or 3 1/10. I told you I was going to show you how to manually multiply decimals. And so when you're multiplying with decimals, it's a little different than when you're adding, subtracting. You don't need to keep them lined up. And technically, there's an invisible decimal to the right of that 5. But when you're multiplying, like 3.1 times 5, you want to check and see how many digits to the right of the decimal there are, because in your answer, you're going to show that invisible decimal and move it 1 point to the left. So 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 3 is 15. There was 1 digit to the right of the decimal. So in my answer, I show that invisible 1. I move it 1 time to the left. And you can find there's 15.5. And that represents this step here. 5 times 3.1 is 15.5. Right side equals the left side. X has got to equal 3.1. I know that's the correct answer. Hey, thanks for joining me. Solving one-step equations. Math is easy. Take it step by step.